Yeah, it's definitely, like I said, I think it's going to be revolutionary in terms of not just the sports performance world, but the training world because of the readouts. And I actually want to talk more about the software because that was the coolest thing for me. It's outside of doing like all the performance testing because that's just straight fun. But getting the readout was even more fun because then I got to see like the breakdown. And you showed me
Right.
it's a very comprehensive readout. And I'm going to lay it over the video here so that way people can see it.
So essentially, when we're looking at this, the first thing we want to do. So first off, we have lots of different types of tests that we can do. So it might be beneficial for you guys to kind of see that we have a multitude of tests. So just so we can kind of go into what the software is like, when you log in, let's say you select a user, you have the ability to kind of train, right, in freestyle or workout mode, or you can go into the testing mode, and we have all kinds of pre-made tests, right? And we have this general power test, which kind of looks at power in every major region of the body and gives you this nice breakdown of it. And then we also have the Cressey Performance test, which is the one I took you through, that's specifically designed with Eric Cressey to really help determine uh, where rotational athletes should lie in their training on the speed, strength, speed continuum, right? And so this is the one we took you through, right? And if you kind of take a look at what it consisted of, it's a press in a row, trunk rotation, a plyometric trunk rotation, some diagonals on each arm, and then we jumped into lateral bounds and even did a full body rotational shot put in order to get full body rotational power. And then we did vertical jump to look at leg power, right? So after you did that test, this is the result that pulled up, right? This is the report that we see. And the best way that you can look at this, or the things to really focus your eyes on, is wherever you see yellow and red, that's good, right? That's higher on the power percentile chart in those areas of the body. Wherever you see these cooler colors, those are areas where you might need some work, right? And green is just kind of right down the middle. It's average, right? So if we then look at this test, it's looking at power, output, and it basically gives you a score for every region of the body, right, or for every movement that you did, and then it also at the same time looks at your acceleration, right? And so then we look at those numbers, and then at the very top, it creates a summary of your overall power output ranking and your overall acceleration ranking, right? And so the first thing that you want to do is take a look at that power versus the acceleration and get a sense of which one's better. If
Right,
you're in
right.
this case, your acceleration was pretty significantly higher than your power output. And so what that means is you're able to get to peak speed pretty quickly, but your peak speed isn't as high as it could be, right? Your peak power isn't as high as it could be. So in your case, we actually want to work more on the strength speed side of the continuum to elevate this power number. Whereas if we had seen the opposite, right, like we'd seen your high power but a low acceleration, then we would do the opposite. We would want to work on speed strength and really work on acceleration, and explosiveness in order to elevate the acceleration number. So that's the first thing we look at. And then, outside of that, you're really starting to look at, where are the areas that need the most attention, what areas are good. And you can kind of see you're generally speaking, above average in the chest and the back, right? Have some weakness, it looks like, in your D2 extension pattern, which, for the listeners and people viewing, that's pulling down with this diagonal movement, right? So not going up like this, but rather pulling down. Looks like that area needs a little work from a power standpoint. But then we can also do things like go into the core, and we can say, okay, hey, which one is more powerful, your plyo trunk rotation or your non-plyometric trunk rotation, your static start trunk rotation. And what we should see is that when you do a plyometric trunk rotation, you should be about 10% higher in your power output, typically, when you do a plyometric version of a trunk rotation versus a non-plyometric trunk rotation, or a static start. The best way that users can think about this is, or listeners, excuse me, can think about this is, if you were to do a jump and you're trying to jump as high as you can, imagine if you did a static start jump, that would be like going down and doing a squat, waiting a couple of seconds, then jumping, right? Versus doing a quick down and up, right? If you do that quick down and up, you're doing that plyometric, you're going to get a lot higher on your jump, about 10 to 15% is what you would normally expect.
Right.
So then what we do is we look at this and we say, okay, which one's higher, your counter movement or your non-counter movement? And actually, in your case, you're kind of an outlier. Your static start was a lot higher than your plyometric, right? And maybe it was about 4% higher. So usually we see it the other way around, where the plyometric is typically higher, and if it's not, then we tell the athlete they need to work more on those plyometrics. But in your case, it could have been, maybe just first time testing or something like that. Maybe you weren't really quite getting it when you were doing the plyometrics, or maybe this is truthful and you you're just a lot stronger when you do your static stuff. So, but I actually think it's probably considering that you rank really highly on acceleration. Typically, we see people that rank high in acceleration but lower on power. They're typically more powerful on their plyometric than their non-plyometric, usually because they are better at using that free elastic recoil to generate power. So I would suspect if you did this test again, it might look a little different. But yeah, I mean, these are just some of the things we want to, we're able to pull out. I mean, until this test, there really was no good way to assess those differences, like very, very, efficiently. But we have people that can do these tests in about 5 minutes, right? So just look at all the data and all the different regions of the body you're able to get from this, and you get a sense for why the software platform is really so valuable, and why we're really only scratching the surface of where we want to go with this. Because currently you do the test, and it takes someone like me going through it to or a strength and conditioning professional to go through it to explain to the athlete, okay, here's what we want to work on. This is what this means. But in the future, it's going to be all about do the test on Proteus, then Proteus will recommend and design a program for you, and you'll be able to either do it on Proteus or off Proteus. But it'll give you those recommendations either way. If you do it on Proteus, it'll even design. You can just follow the workout. On every single session you go, it'll automatically progress your loads and reps and sets, right? And until you come to a point where you need to retest again. So that's kind of the future of where we're going with it. But always knowing that we have all these different ways that we can slice and dice the data, because our data set is so rich.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic. I mean, the detail breakdown, it helped me out, to be totally honest. It was like one of those things, once we went through this test, I was like, oh, these are definitely things I need to be working on. And I started working on them. It's pretty crazy to see how it's already helped me, like in my playing. I can tell you from firsthand experience, it's so worth it. It's so cool.